My name is Leah, and I'm 30 years old. For 7 years, I thought I had the kind of marriage people dream about. You know, the kind where you build a life together, support each other through thick and thin, and wake up every day grateful for your partner. I managed our home, our finances, our entire life, while my husband built his business. I thought I was being a good wife. Turns out I was just being useful. And the moment I stopped being useful in their eyes, they didn't hesitate to call me useless. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you power they never see coming. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you've ever felt undervalued in a relationship, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story might just speak to your soul. Now let me take you back to the moment everything fell apart. I met Garrett 8 years ago at a corporate networking event in downtown Seattle. I was working as a marketing manager for a mid-sized tech firm, and he was this ambitious guy with big dreams about starting his own company. He had this energy about him, this confidence that made you believe he could actually pull it off. We clicked instantly. He made me laugh. He listened when I talked about my day. He remembered little details like how I took my coffee or my favorite type of flower. We dated for a year before he proposed. It was romantic, thoughtful. He took me back to the restaurant where we had our first date, got down on one knee, right there in front of everyone, and asked me to spend my life with him. I said yes without hesitation. I loved him. I really did. The wedding was small but beautiful, just close family and friends. His mother, Dorothy, seemed pleasant enough at first. A little formal, a little particular about things, but I figured that was just her generation. His younger sister, Jenna, was in the bridal party. She smiled for the photos. Everything seemed perfect. About 6 months into our marriage, Garrett's startup was struggling to get off the ground. He was stressed, working long hours, barely sleeping. One night he came home exhausted and just broke down. He said he didn't know if he could keep going, that maybe he should just give up and get a regular job. I held him and told him I believed in him. I told him we'd figure it out together. That's when I made the offer. I told him I'd quit my job and manage everything at home so he could focus entirely on building the business. I'd handle the bills, the household, the life logistics. He could pour all his energy into making his dream a reality. He was hesitant at first, worried about the financial pressure, but I assured him we'd be okay. We had some savings, and his business was starting to show promise. So I left my career. I walked away from the marketing position I'd worked hard to achieve, from colleagues I respected, from projects I was passionate about. I did it because I loved him and because I believed in us. At first, it felt like the right decision. I set up systems for managing our finances. I opened a joint checking account and made sure all our bills were organized and paid on time. The mortgage, car payments, insurance, utilities, everything ran smoothly. I made sure Garrett never had to worry about forgetting to pay something or dealing with late fees. I scheduled his dentist appointments, picked up his dry cleaning, made sure he had clean clothes and hot meals. I also became his unofficial business support. I attended networking events with him, made small talk with potential investors, hosted dinners at our home for his clients. I was good at it too. People liked me. I could read a room, know when to jump into a conversation and when to step back. More than once, Garrett told me I'd helped him close a deal just by making someone feel comfortable. Our life had a rhythm. He worked, I managed. It wasn't the partnership I'd imagined when we got married, but I told myself it was temporary. Once the business took off, things would balance out. We'd have time for each other again. We'd travel, maybe start a family. He promised me that when the company was stable, I'd never have to worry about anything. But somewhere along the way, the appreciation faded. The thank yous became less frequent. The acknowledgement disappeared. Garrett started coming home later and later, often too tired to even have a conversation. When I tried to talk to him about my day, about something I'd read or thought about, he'd zone out or check his phone. I started to feel invisible in my own marriage. Then his family started coming around more often. Dorothy began showing up unannounced, letting herself in with the spare key we'd given her for emergencies. She'd walk through the house, running her finger along surfaces, checking for dust. She'd open the refrigerator and comment on what I'd bought at the grocery store. She had opinions about everything from the way I folded towels to the brand of laundry detergent I used. Jenna was worse. She was 28, single, and worked in finance. Every time she visited, she made sure to talk about her career, her accomplishments, her busy, important life. Then she'd look at me and ask what I did all day. The question was always loaded, always laced with judgment. When I explained that I managed the household and supported Garrett's business, she'd make a face like I'd said I did nothing. The criticisms started small. Dorothy would suggest I should try a different recipe for Sunday dinner. Jenna would mention that her friend's wife had a side business, and maybe I should consider doing something productive. I tried to brush it off, tried to be gracious. These were Garrett's family. I wanted them to like me, but Garrett never defended me. Whenever his mother or sister made a comment, he'd stay silent or change the subject. Once, when I brought it up later, asking why he didn't say something, he told me I was being too sensitive. He said they meant well, that they were just trying to help. He made me feel like I was the problem for being hurt by their words. So I tried harder. I made elaborate meals when they came over, made sure the house was spotless, smiled through every passive-aggressive comment. I thought if I could just be perfect enough, they'd see my value. They'd appreciate what I contributed. I was wrong. The harder I tried, the more they found to criticize. It was like they were looking for reasons to put me down. And slowly, insidiously, I started to believe them. Maybe I wasn't doing enough. Maybe I was lazy. Maybe I should be doing more with my time. The confidence I'd once had, the self-assurance from my career days, began to erode. Late at night, when Garrett was asleep beside me, I'd lie awake wondering who I'd become. I barely recognized myself anymore. I'd given up so much, and somewhere along the way, I'd lost myself entirely. But I still held on to hope. I told myself this was just a rough patch. Marriages go through phases. Once the business was more stable, once the pressure eased, things would get better. We'd reconnect. He'd see me again, really see me the way he used to. I clung to that hope like a lifeline, even as everything around me started to crumble. The breaking point started on a Friday evening in late September. I'd been planning a special dinner for the following week. Our anniversary was coming up, 7 years of marriage, and I wanted to do something meaningful. I'd bought ingredients for Garrett's favorite meal, a complicated recipe that would take me most of the afternoon to prepare. I'd even bought a nice bottle of wine and made a reservation at a bakery to pick up a special dessert. I was in the kitchen prepping vegetables when I heard the front door open. Garrett was home early, which was unusual, but then I heard other voices, Dorothy and Jenna. My stomach sank. They walked into the kitchen without greeting me. Dorothy looked around with her usual critical eye, and Jenna immediately sat down at the kitchen table, pulling out her phone. Garrett came in behind them, looking slightly uncomfortable. He cleared his throat. I ran into them at the store. I invited them to stay for dinner. I stared at him. Tonight? Why not? You're cooking anyway, right? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that I'd bought these specific ingredients for our anniversary dinner, that this was supposed to be special. But Dorothy was already opening my refrigerator, and Jenna was scrolling through her phone, and the words died in my throat. Okay, I said quietly. I'll set extra places. Dorothy pulled out the chicken I'd been planning to marinate. This looks a little old. When did you buy this? Yesterday, I said. It's fine. She wrinkled her nose. If you say so. I swallowed my frustration and continued cooking. I adapted the recipe, stretched it to feed 5 instead of 2. I set the table nicely, put out cloth napkins, tried to salvage some semblance of the evening I'd envisioned. Dinner was tense from the start. Dorothy took one bite of the chicken and made a face. This is dry. Don't you know how to cook properly? Garrett works so hard. The least you could do is learn to cook a decent meal. Garrett laughed nervously, but said nothing. Jenna chimed in without looking up from her phone. Garrett works so hard. The least you could do is learn to cook better. I mean, you're home all day. How hard can it be? I gripped my fork tightly, trying to maintain composure. I've been cooking for years. This recipe usually turns out well. Usually isn't good enough, Dorothy said primly. A wife should take pride in feeding her husband properly. I looked at Garrett, waiting for him to say something, anything. He avoided my eyes and took another sip of wine. The message was clear. He wasn't going to defend me. The rest of the meal passed in painful small talk. Dorothy and Jenna discussed people I didn't know, events I hadn't attended. I cleared the dishes in silence, declining Dorothy's offer to help in a tone that made it clear she was criticizing my cleaning methods anyway. When they finally left after lingering for another hour and commenting on the dust on our bookshelf, I turned to Garrett. I was shaking, whether from anger or hurt or both, I couldn't tell. Why didn't you say anything? He looked confused. About what? Your mother insulted my cooking. Your sister called me lazy, and you just sat there." He sighed heavily like I was exhausting him. "Leah, why do you always make such a big deal out of everything? They were just making conversation." "That wasn't conversation. That was humiliation." "You're being dramatic. My mother's just particular. You know how she is." "And you're okay with her treating me like that in our home?" He set his wine glass down hard on the counter. "Our home, I pay the mortgage, Leah. Maybe if you contributed something financially, you'd have more of a say." The words hit me like a slap. I stood there stunned as he walked past me and headed upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close. Not slam, just close. Somehow that was worse. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes, my hands trembling, and felt something crack inside me. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I'd been too trusting to see before. Garrett was coming home later and later. When I asked about his day, his answers were vague. Business meetings, he'd say, investor dinners, networking events, all reasonable explanations for a startup founder. But then I found the receipt. I was organizing papers for our filing system when it fell out of his jacket pocket. A receipt from an expensive French restaurant downtown, the kind of place with dim lighting and intimate tables. Dinner for two, a bottle of wine that cost more than our weekly grocery budget, chocolate lava cake for dessert. My first thought was that maybe he'd taken a client there. But something about it felt wrong. The date was a Thursday night 3 weeks ago. He'd come home past 11, said he'd grabbed fast food after a late meeting. I remembered because I'd made dinner and waited for him, eventually eating alone and putting his portion in the refrigerator. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I told myself to trust him. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. I started looking more carefully at our bank statements. That's when I saw the pattern. Charges at stores Garrett never shopped at. A jewelry store, a spa. Multiple charges at upscale restaurants on nights he'd told me he was working late at the office. I felt sick, but I needed to be sure. I needed proof before I accused him of anything. One evening I confronted him calmly. I laid out the receipts on the kitchen table and asked him to explain them. He glanced at them, his expression neutral. "What about them?" "This restaurant. You told me you worked late that night. And this jewelry store. I haven't received any jewelry." "The restaurant was a business dinner with a potential investor. The jewelry was a gift for my assistant. She'd been working overtime." "Your assistant, who's 60 years old and has worked with you for 3 months." His jaw tightened. "Are you accusing me of something, Leah? After everything I do for this family?" "Everything you do, I manage everything. I pay all the bills. I keep this household running." "You don't work," he said coldly. "You live off my money. All you do is sit at home and spend what I earn." The words were so shocking, so completely divorced from reality that I actually laughed. "My money. We agreed I'd quit my job to support your business. We agreed this was a partnership." "Support?" His voice rose. "You call nagging me support, questioning every expense my mother is right about you." "Right about what?" He looked at me with something like contempt. "You're useless. You contribute nothing. You're dead weight." The word useless landed like a physical blow. I felt it in my chest, sharp and cold and devastating. I'd given up my career for him. I'd managed every aspect of our lives so he could focus on his dreams. I'd endured his family's cruelty and his indifference. And this was what he thought of me. "Get out," I whispered. "What?" "Get out of this house, now." He grabbed his keys and wallet, his face red with anger. "Fine. Maybe I'll actually get some peace and quiet for once." He left. The door slammed behind him, and he didn't come home that night. I sat on the couch until dawn, crying until I had no tears, left my mind replaying every moment of our marriage, seeing it all through new eyes. The slow erosion of respect, the gradual isolation from my friends, the way I'd made myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the box they'd created for me. By the time the sun rose, something had shifted inside me. The grief was still there, raw and painful. But underneath it, anger was beginning to burn. After that night, things deteriorated rapidly. Garrett came home the next day acting like nothing had happened. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain where he'd been. He just walked in, took a shower, and went to his office. And his family descended like vultures. Dorothy started showing up almost every day. She'd let herself in, make coffee in my kitchen, and settle onto my couch like she owned the place. She'd criticize everything. The way I organized the pantry, the brand of toilet paper I bought, the fact that I hadn't dusted the ceiling fan in the guest room. "A proper wife takes pride in her home," she'd say, running her finger along a windowsill. "Cleanliness is next to godliness, Leah. Surely you have enough time during your days to keep things spotless." Jenna was even worse. She'd come over after work still in her business clothes and plant herself at the kitchen counter while I made dinner. She'd talk about her job, about the deals she was closing, about her impressive salary and her busy social life. Then she'd watch me cook and make little comments. "Is that really how you chop an onion? There are more efficient ways, you know." "You're using jarred sauce, wow. I always make mine from scratch." Garrett must get so tired of coming home to mediocre food. One afternoon, Dorothy went too far. She opened my kitchen cabinets and started pulling things out. Boxes of pasta cans of soup snacks I'd bought for quick meals. "This is all junk," she announced, piling items on the counter. "No wonder Garrett looks tired all the time. You're poisoning him with processed garbage." "Those are my groceries," I said, my voice tight. "Please don't throw away my food." "Your food, Garrett's money paid for it." She dumped several boxes into the trash can. "You should be grateful I'm helping you improve." I wanted to scream. I wanted to physically remove her from my house. But Garrett was in his office down the hall. Surely he could hear this. Surely he'd come out and tell his mother to stop. He didn't. When I went to find him later, he was on a video call. I waited until he finished, then told him what his mother had done. He barely looked up from his laptop. "She's just trying to help Leah. She cares about my health. She threw away food I bought. She went through my kitchen like it's hers." "It's not like you paid for it," he muttered. The comment was so casual, so dismissive, it took my breath away. I left his office without another word, but the worst was yet to come. I'd been noticing discrepancies in our finances for weeks. Garrett had always been transparent about the business finances because I'd helped set up the accounts when he first started. I had access to view the business banking, though I rarely checked it anymore. One sleepless night I logged in. What I saw made my blood run cold. The business was profitable, very profitable. Contrary to everything Garrett had been telling me about struggling and barely making it, the company had been generating substantial revenue for over a year. There were consistent deposits, healthy balances, clear signs of success. But that wasn't all. I found transfers, large amounts of money being moved from the business account into a personal account I didn't recognize. I dug deeper, following the paper trail. Garrett had opened a separate personal banking account without telling me. The one I had access to, our joint account, showed his modest direct deposits, but this other account showed the real money. I felt like I was going to be sick. How long had this been going on? How much had he hidden from me? I kept digging. Credit card statements for an account I'd never seen before. The charges told a story I didn't want to believe. Jewelry purchases, high-end restaurants, hotel rooms, flowers, a pattern of expenses that could only mean one thing. He was having an affair, and he'd been lying about everything. The next morning I waited until Garrett was showered and dressed for work. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the evidence displayed across the screen. "We need to talk," I said calmly. He poured coffee, not looking at me. "I don't have time. I have an early meeting." "Make time, now." Something in my voice made him stop. He turned and saw the laptop, saw the bank statements and credit card records. His face went pale, then red. "You went through my accounts, our accounts. I have access to the business banking. Remember, I helped you set it up." "You had no right." "I had every right. We're married. We're supposed to be partners." I gestured at the screen. "You've been lying to me. About the business, about the money, about everything." He set his coffee down hard. "Fine. You want the truth. I've been seeing someone. Someone who actually appreciates me. Someone who has a career and ambition. Someone who's not a useless housewife." The words should have hurt more than they did, but I'd been preparing myself for this. What I wasn't prepared for was what came next. "Who is she?" I asked. "Does it matter? She's everything you're not. She's successful. She's driven. She doesn't sit around all day doing nothing." Then why haven't you filed for divorce? His smile was cruel. Because you're still useful for managing the boring stuff. The bills, the house, all the tedious details I don't want to deal with. And technically, you're liable for our debts too. Joint accounts work both ways, Leah. The truth hit me like ice water. He'd been using me, keeping me around not out of love or even habit, but because I was convenient, because I handled all the life logistics he found beneath him, because if anything went wrong financially, I'd be on the hook too. You're a coward, I said softly, and you're delusional if you think you could make it without me. What would you do? You haven't worked in 7 years. No one's going to hire you. You have no skills, no experience that matters anymore. You're stuck, Leah, and we both know it. He grabbed his keys and left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen, surrounded by the life I'd built, the home I'd maintained, the systems I'd created. And for the first time, I felt something besides hurt and betrayal. I felt clarity. Garrett thought I was stuck. He thought I was helpless. He thought I'd just keep accepting this treatment, keep managing his life, keep playing my role as the useful, useless wife. He was wrong. The final humiliation came on a Saturday evening 2 weeks later. Dorothy had insisted on hosting a family dinner, and she'd made it clear that my attendance was mandatory. Not requested, mandatory. I almost didn't go. Every instinct told me to refuse to draw a line, but part of me needed to see this through. I needed to witness just how far they were willing to go. I arrived at Dorothy's house to find the dining room full. Not just Dorothy and Jenna, but aunts, uncles, cousins I'd met maybe once or twice over the years. The extended family had gathered, and from the looks on their faces, they all knew something I didn't. But what made my stomach drop was the woman sitting next to Garrett at the table. She was around my age, maybe a year or two older. Polished professional, dressed in designer clothes. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled just so. She was beautiful in that intimidating, put-together way that made you feel small. Garrett stood when I entered. "Leah, this is Amanda. She's my business partner." Business partner. The lie was so transparent it was almost laughable. The way he looked at her, the way his hand had been resting near hers on the table, the way she smiled at me with barely concealed satisfaction. This was the other woman. "Nice to meet you," I said, my voice steady, despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Likewise." Her tone was polite but cold. "I've heard so much about you." "I bet you have," I thought. Dorothy gestured impatiently. "Sit down, Leah. We're about to eat." I took the only empty seat at the far end of the table, as far from Garrett as possible. The meal was served, and conversation flowed around me like I wasn't there. Dorothy gushed about Amanda. Finally, a woman with real ambition. Amanda closed $1 million deal last month. Can you imagine? Jenna nodded enthusiastically. And she runs marathons, 5 of them so far. I couldn't believe it when Garrett told me. An aunt chimed in. "I heard you speak 3 languages, Amanda. How impressive." The compliments kept coming, each one another dagger. They weren't just praising Amanda. They were comparing her to me. They were making sure I understood exactly how I'd failed to measure up. And through it all, Garrett smiled and laughed and touched Amanda's hand under the table. His mother and sister and entire family celebrated this woman, the one he was cheating with, right in front of me. They welcomed her into the fold, into the position that was supposed to be mine. Meanwhile, every comment about me was criticism. My outfit wasn't formal enough. My hair looked messy. I was slouching. My plate was too full. I wasn't eating enough. Nothing I did was right. I sat there frozen, watching my marriage die in real time. Then Dorothy stood up. She tapped her wine glass with a fork, calling for attention. The room quieted. "I think it's time we address the elephant in the room," she began, looking directly at me. "Leah, you've been a disappointment as a wife. Garrett deserves better. We've all watched you contribute nothing to this family for 7 years. You've been lazy, unmotivated, and honestly a burden on my son." Jenna joined in, her voice sharp. "You're lazy. You're useless. You're dead weight. It's embarrassing, honestly." Around the table, family members nodded. Some looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Others seemed to be enjoying the show. Garrett cleared his throat. He looked at me with something like pity. "Mom's right. I've been too nice for too long. I should have done this months ago." He paused for dramatic effect. "I want a divorce, and I think you should leave tonight. There's no point dragging this out." Dorothy nodded approvingly. "The house is in Garrett's name anyway. You have no claim to it." The room was silent, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to cry, to beg to make a scene, waiting to see me broken. I looked around the table at these people. Garrett's family who'd never accepted me, the extended relatives who'd judged me from afar, Amanda sitting there with her smug smile, and Garrett, the man I'd loved, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, looking at me like I was nothing. Something crystallized inside me. Not sadness, not even anger, just cold, perfect clarity. I stood up slowly. Every eye in the room tracked my movement. "You're right about one thing," I said quietly. "This ends tonight." I picked up my purse, turned, and walked out. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't give them the satisfaction. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove home. My home. The one I'd maintained, organized, and managed for 7 years. The one where every bill was in my name, every account tied to my Social Security number, every service registered under my information. I walked into my house and sat down in the living room in the dark, letting the silence settle around me. Tears finally came hot and bitter, streaming down my face. I cried for the marriage I'd believed in. I cried for the life I'd tried to build. I cried for the woman I'd been before all this, the one with confidence and career ambitions and self-respect. But then the tears stopped, and in their place came something else, something cold and focused and absolutely certain. I pulled out my laptop, logged into every account, and started making a list. Bank accounts, credit cards, utilities, insurance policies, mortgages, car payments, service subscriptions, everything that made our life function. And I realized something that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Almost everything was in my name. I was the primary account holder on the checking accounts. The credit cards were issued to me with Garrett as an authorized user. The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance policies. I'd set them all up 7 years ago when we got married, using my information, my credit, my name. I'd been the one to manage everything, which meant I'd been the one to establish the accounts. Garrett thought he held all the power because he made the money. But money is useless if you can't access it, if your cards don't work, if your lights don't turn on, if your water gets shut off. He'd called me useless. He'd humiliated me in front of his entire family. He'd paraded his mistress in front of me like I didn't matter. It was time to show him exactly how useful I'd been, and exactly what happened when that usefulness disappeared. I woke up at 5 a.m., my mind sharp and focused. I'd barely slept, but adrenaline had taken over. I made coffee, sat down at my laptop, and began executing my plan. First, the money. I logged into our joint checking account and transferred every dollar into my personal account. $65,412. Years of careful saving emergency funds money I'd managed and protected. It moved with a few clicks. Then I closed the joint account entirely. Next, the credit cards. 3 cards were in my name with Garrett as an authorized user. I called each company, told them I wanted to report the cards as lost or stolen. New cards would be issued to me only at my new address. The old cards, the ones Garrett had in his wallet, would be deactivated immediately. I moved through my list methodically. Auto insurance on both vehicles. I was the primary policyholder. I called and canceled the coverage, effective immediately. The cars were registered in my name because I'd handled all the DMV paperwork. My name, my insurance, my decision to end it. Homeowners insurance. Canceled. Electric company. I explained I was moving out and requested immediate disconnection of service. Gas company. Same story. Water and sewer. Terminated. Internet and cable. Disconnected. Every service that kept the house functioning, I eliminated. Some would take effect immediately. Others would shut off within 24 hours. But all of them required the account holder me to authorize reconnection. And Garrett wasn't the account holder. Then I made the call I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Patricia, my lawyer friend from college. We'd kept in touch over the years, occasional coffee dates and text messages. I knew she'd become a divorce attorney, and a good one. She answered on the second ring. "Leah, it's early. Everything okay?" "I need your help," I said. I'm filing for legal separation, probably divorce, and I need it done right. We talked for an hour. I explained everything. The affair, the financial deception, the emotional abuse from him and his family. Patricia listened, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. By the end of the call, she had a plan. "We're filing for legal separation today," she said, "and I'm requesting a freeze on certain business assets pending the divorce proceedings. Since you helped establish the business and can prove your contributions, you have legitimate claims. He won't be able to move money around or hide assets. How fast can you do this? I'll have the paperwork filed by noon. And Leah, you're doing the right thing. Document everything. Save all communication. Don't engage emotionally. Let me handle him legally." After we hung up, I systematically changed passwords on every account I could access. Email, banking, utilities, subscriptions. I created a new email address and forwarded my address to a P.O. box I'd rented the day before. I'd planned this carefully, and now I was executing each step with precision. By 10 a.m., I'd withdrawn my name from any debt or liability associated with Garrett's business. Patricia filed the necessary legal documents. He could keep his company, but he couldn't trap me with financial responsibility for it. Then I waited. It happened faster than I expected. Around 10:30, my phone started buzzing. Text messages from Garrett, lots of them. I'd blocked his number from calling, but texts still came through. Card declined. What's going on? Another card declined. Call me now. Why aren't any of my cards working? Leah, answer your phone. I didn't respond. Instead, I poured another cup of coffee and waited. Around 11, there was pounding on my apartment door. I'd rented a small furnished place the week before, paid 3 months in advance with money from my personal savings. I'd moved essential items slowly over several days. Things Garrett never noticed were gone. I looked through the peephole. Garrett stood there, face red, looking frantic. I didn't open the door. "Leah, I know you're in there. Open up. We need to talk." I called the police non-emergency line. "My estranged husband is at my door refusing to leave. I've asked him to go. I need him trespassed from the property." An officer arrived within 20 minutes. Through the door, I heard him speaking to Garrett. "Sir, the resident has requested you leave. If you return, you'll be arrested for trespassing." Garrett's voice was loud, angry. "That's my wife. She stole my money." "Sir, do you have proof this is your residence?" Silence. "I suggest you leave now." More silence, then footsteps walking away. My phone continued to buzz. Texts from Garrett, from Dorothy, from Jenna. All angry, all demanding, all threatening. I screenshot every single one for Patricia, then blocked all their numbers. One message came from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Amanda. Garrett is very upset. Can't you be reasonable about this?" I typed one response. "He can live with his mistakes. Goodbye." Then I blocked that number too. Patricia called that afternoon. "He's been served with the separation papers. His lawyer already called me trying to negotiate. Apparently the business account freeze is causing problems." "Good." "Leah, I have to ask, are you sure about all this? It's going to get ugly." I thought about 7 years of making myself small, 7 years of enduring insults and accusations, 7 years of being called useless while I held everything together. I thought about sitting at that dinner table watching them celebrate my replacement. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. The fallout was spectacular. Without access to the primary accounts, Garrett couldn't process payroll for his employees. The business accounts were frozen pending legal review, and the personal accounts I'd drained and closed had been his backup funding. His carefully constructed financial house of cards collapsed. I heard through mutual acquaintances that his employees started quitting. 2 weeks of delayed paychecks will do that. Some threatened to sue. His business partners, the real ones, started asking questions about financial management and discovered discrepancies. Apparently, Garrett's bookkeeping hadn't been as clean as he'd claimed. Amanda disappeared almost immediately. When the money problem started, she suddenly had to focus on her career and thought it was best they keep things professional. The affair evaporated the moment it became inconvenient. Garrett moved in with Dorothy. I found this out because Dorothy called me from Garrett's phone screaming about how I'd ruined her son's life. I listened for about 30 seconds, then hung up. Patricia sent her a cease and desist letter. The calls stopped. But the truly satisfying part came when Dorothy's utilities started getting shut off. Turns out I'd been the one auto-paying her electricity and water bills from our joint account. She'd thought Garrett was handling it, covering her expenses as a dutiful son. She hadn't realized it was me, the useless daughter-in-law, who'd been quietly taking care of her needs for years. Her gas was shut off in October. Her water went next. Then her electricity. She had to scramble to get services restored in her name, prove residency pay deposits. At 70 years old, she'd never set up utilities herself. Her late husband had handled it, then Garrett supposedly took over. Except it had always been me. Jenna's car insurance lapsed too. She'd been on a family plan I'd established and managed. She got pulled over for a broken taillight and discovered she was driving uninsured. Her car got impounded. The fee to retrieve it was $800 plus she had to show proof of insurance. She called me once, her voice shaking with barely suppressed rage, demanding I fix it. I told her I was no longer in the business of managing other people's lives. Then I hung up. Garrett tried everything. His lawyer argued I had no right to the money in the joint account. Patricia calmly explained that joint meant joint, and I had every legal right to withdraw my own funds. His lawyer claimed I'd sabotaged his business. Patricia pointed out that I'd removed myself from liability, which was my right, and that his inability to manage his own finances wasn't my responsibility. He tried to get access to the house, claiming he needed his belongings. Patricia arranged a supervised visit. He showed up to find the house completely empty. I'd hired movers while he was at work one day and cleared out everything. Furniture, appliances, dishes, everything. The house was just walls and floors. "This is my house," he'd shouted at the police officer supervising the visit. "Actually, sir, according to the deed, this house is jointly owned. Your wife had every right to remove community property. If you feel items were taken that belong solely to you, you'll need to address that in the divorce proceedings." Everything I'd taken was either purchased during the marriage, making it community property, or items I'd brought into the marriage. I'd been meticulous about documentation. Patricia had lists, receipts, proof of purchase for everything. The house became Garrett's problem. His name was on the mortgage, but he couldn't pay it without access to funds. And now the house sat empty, no insurance, no utilities, just a shell requiring monthly payments he couldn't afford. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. I updated my resume, reaching out to former colleagues from my marketing days. The response surprised me. Several people remembered me, remembered my work. The 7-year gap was a hurdle, but I was honest about it. I'd taken time to support my husband's business. Now I was ready to return to my career. I got 3 interview offers in 2 weeks. The third one came through. A marketing director position at a growing firm, competitors to Garrett's company, actually. The salary was $90,000 a year, more than I'd made before, enough to rebuild my life on my own terms. I rented a nice 1-bedroom apartment downtown, small but mine. I bought a used Honda Civic, reliable and practical. I registered it in my name only. I got insurance in my name only. I opened new bank accounts, new credit cards, everything fresh and clean and entirely under my control. I started therapy. Twice a week at first, working through 7 years of emotional manipulation and abuse. My therapist helped me see patterns I'd ignored, helped me understand that none of this had been my fault. I'd been gaslit, isolated, systematically broken down by people who claimed to love me. But I was building myself back up. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with over the years. College friends, former coworkers, people I'd drifted away from when my world shrank to just managing Garrett's life. They welcomed me back with open arms, anger on my behalf, support I desperately needed. "We always thought something was off," one friend admitted over coffee. "You just seemed diminished, not yourself. But every time we tried to reach out, you were busy or he needed something." I'd been isolated so gradually I hadn't noticed. But now, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, the contrast was stark. 3 months after I'd walked out of that dinner, I was a different person. Stronger, clearer, free. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Garrett tried to claim he deserved more because he'd earned the income. Patricia calmly presented evidence of my contributions. Managing the household had monetary value. Supporting his business had value. 7 years of unpaid labor had value. And his affair, his financial deception, his emotional abuse, all of it mattered in court. We settled out of court eventually. I got a fair division of assets. Not vindictive, not punishing, just fair. I kept my car, my savings, my share of what we'd built together. He kept the house, the business, and the consequences of his choices. I didn't want to destroy him. I just wanted to be free of him. And I was. 6 months after I walked out of that awful dinner, my life was unrecognizable. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning. Patricia called to tell me it was official. I was no longer Leah Mitchell. I'd gone back to my maiden name, Leah Morrison. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked. "Free," I said, and I meant it. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Garrett's business was limping along. He'd managed to secure new funding from investors, but his reputation had taken a hit. Word got around in business circles. People talked. The affair, the way he'd treated his wife, the financial mess. It all painted a picture of someone unreliable, someone with poor judgment. He was dating again, apparently. No one serious. Amanda had married someone else, a CEO of a pharmaceutical company. She'd moved on quickly, probably had been looking for an upgrade even while she was with Garrett. Dorothy and Jenna had stopped speaking to him as much. From what I gathered, they blamed him for the whole situation. He'd lost a wife who managed everything, cost them their easy financial support, and humiliated the family with his affair. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. The house went into foreclosure eventually. He couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments, not without the cushion I'd provided for years. Last I heard, he'd moved into a small apartment, nothing like the home we'd shared. I didn't take pleasure in his struggles, not really. I just felt a sense of justice. He'd learned finally what I'd been worth. He'd discovered the hard way that managing a life, a household, a partnership, that all of it had value, real, tangible value. And without someone doing that work, everything fell apart. As for me, I was thriving. My job was challenging, but rewarding. I'd forgotten how good it felt to use my brain professionally to contribute to strategy and see results. My team respected me. My boss appreciated my work. I got positive feedback recognition opportunities to grow. All the things I'd given up were mine again. I made new friends through work. I joined a book club. I started going to yoga classes on Saturday mornings. I took myself to movies and dinners and didn't feel guilty about it. I existed for myself, not as an extension of someone else. And then I met David. He was a teacher at a local elementary school, volunteering at the same community center where I'd started helping out on weekends. He was kind, patient, thoughtful. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answers. He remembered little details like how I took my coffee or that I didn't like mushrooms. We started talking then, getting coffee, then actual dates. It was slow and careful. I was honest with him about my divorce, about needing to take things easy. He understood. He didn't push. He just showed up consistently, reliably, treating me with the respect I'd been denied for so long. "You're remarkable," he told me one evening over dinner. "The way you rebuilt your life, the strength that took. I admire that." I almost cried, not from sadness, but from the sheer relief of being seen clearly and appreciated genuinely. We'd been dating for 3 months when Garrett reached out one last time. A text from a new number I didn't have blocked. "I made a mistake. I see that now. Can we talk? Maybe try again?" I stared at the message for a long moment. A year ago, even 6 months ago, I might have wavered. Some part of me might have wanted to believe he'd changed, that we could go back to the beginning when things were good. But I wasn't that person anymore. I typed a simple response. "I've moved on. I hope you find what you're looking for. Goodbye, Garrett." Then I blocked the number and deleted the conversation. He was my past, and I was focused on my future. Looking back now, I can see the whole journey clearly, the slow erosion of my self-worth, the way I'd internalized their criticisms and made myself smaller to accommodate their egos, the years I'd spent believing I was lucky to have Garrett grateful he'd stayed with useless me. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed narrative designed to keep me in place, keep me useful, keep me from realizing my own power. Being called useless was the worst pain I'd ever felt in that moment. The word cut deep because I'd started to believe it was true. I'd measured my worth by their standards, and by those standards I'd failed completely. But it was also my wake-up call. That dinner, that awful public humiliation, it shattered the last of my illusions. I finally saw clearly what I'd been refusing to acknowledge. They didn't value me. They never had. And no amount of cooking perfect meals or keeping a spotless house or managing their lives was going to change that. The money, the cancellations, the systematic dismantling of everything I'd built that wasn't really about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself. It was about showing them and showing myself that I had power, that I'd been holding everything together, that without me, their comfortable lives fell apart. His panic when the cards stopped working, when the lights went out, when he realized he couldn't function without the systems I'd created, that was satisfying. I won't pretend it wasn't. There was a fierce joy in watching him scramble in, seeing him finally understand what he'd lost. But the real victory was quieter. It was in the therapy sessions where I untangled years of manipulation. It was in the moment I accepted the job offer and knew I could support myself. It was in the first time I laughed genuinely with new friends. It was in sitting across from David at dinner, being treated with kindness, and recognizing that this was what I deserved. The real victory was getting myself back. I don't hate Garrett anymore. Honestly, I don't feel much of anything toward him. He's a cautionary tale, a lesson learned, a chapter closed. He made his choices. He listened to toxic people and became toxic himself. He threw away something real for something shallow. That's on him. I hope he learns from it eventually. I hope he becomes a better person. But that's not my problem anymore. I'm not responsible for his growth or his happiness or his success. I never was, even though I spent 7 years acting like I was. I'm only responsible for myself now, and that's exactly how it should be. I've learned so much through this experience. I learned that managing a household is real work with real value. I learned that emotional labor counts. I learned that sacrifice in a relationship should be reciprocal, not one-sided. I learned that family loyalty doesn't excuse cruelty. I learned that people will take as much as you let them take, and setting boundaries is an act of self-love. Most importantly, I learned that my worth isn't determined by someone else's perception of me. I'm not useless. I never was. I was capable and competent and strong. I just forgot that for a while. Now I remember. And I'm building a life that reflects my actual value, not someone else's diminished view of it. The woman I am now would barely recognize the woman I was 2 years ago. That Leah was so small, so afraid, so desperate to be appreciated. This Leah knows her worth. This Leah doesn't accept crumbs and call it a feast. This Leah walks away from people who don't treat her right. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's walking away and building something beautiful from the ashes. It's proving them wrong, not with words, but with actions. It's living well, finding joy, creating peace. And you know what? I'm just getting started. There's a whole life ahead of me now. Opportunities I couldn't see when I was trapped in that marriage. Possibilities that open up when you stop trying to make yourself fit into someone else's narrow definition of acceptable. Adventures waiting when you realize you don't need permission or approval to pursue your own happiness. I'm dating someone kind. I'm excelling in my career. I'm reconnecting with myself. I'm building genuine friendships. I'm living in a space that's entirely mine, decorated how I like functioning on my schedule. I'm making decisions based on what I want, not what someone else needs from me. It's not perfect. Some days are hard. Healing isn't linear. Sometimes I still hear Dorothy's voice in my head criticizing something I've done. Sometimes I catch myself about to apologize for taking up space or having an opinion. The damage from those years doesn't disappear overnight, but I'm working on it. And every day I get a little bit stronger, a little bit more myself, a little bit further from that woman who sat silently while her husband's family eviscerated her. If you're reading this, if you're listening to this story, and something in it resonates with you, please hear me. You are not useless. You are not worthless. You are not lucky that someone tolerates you. If people in your life make you feel small, make you question your value, make you believe you should be grateful for their presence, those people are wrong. You deserve respect. You deserve appreciation. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you provide. And if you're not getting that, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to cancel everything and start over. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's hard. Yes, there will be moments when you doubt yourself, when the fear almost pulls you back. But on the other side of that fear is freedom. and freedom is worth fighting for. I canceled the utilities, the accounts, the services, but really I was canceling a life that was killing me slowly. I was canceling the role of useful doormat. I was canceling their permission to treat me as less than human. And in doing that, I found myself again. So to anyone who's ever been called useless, who's ever been made to feel like they contribute nothing, who's ever been the one holding everything together while being told they do nothing, I see you. I was you. And I'm telling you that you're stronger than you know. You're more capable than they'll ever admit. And you deserve so much more than you're accepting. Sometimes love means holding on, but sometimes it means letting go. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is love yourself enough to leave. My name is Leah Morrison. I'm 30 years old, and I'm not useless. I'm free. Have you ever been in a situation where you finally stood up for yourself and everything changed? Drop a comment below and share your story. I'd love to hear how you found your strength. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real-life experiences and honest conversations about relationships, self-worth, and finding your power. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are in your journey, you remember your worth. You're valuable, you matter, and you deserve to be treated that way. Take care of yourselves. And remember, being called useless might hurt in the moment, but it just might be the push you need to prove them spectacularly wrong. Go build something beautiful with your life. You've got this.